So thank you guys so much for being here and being willing to lean in. This is not an easy time for us as people, and it's not an easy conversation, specifically for us as white people. We've got all the white folks on the call here today, and Jamie's coming in. This is great. I want to start us off this morning in a meditation here in a moment, where it is that we can kind of discover, remember, connect to our wholeness. And I feel like that's super important. I like to think of connecting to our wholeness as a revolutionary act in and of itself of equality. Because, you know, connecting to our wholeness is going to be the thing that allows us so many things, but allows us the courage to actually do this work and to see the hard things and to talk about the hard things. So, you know, there's so much, and the wholeness not even being disconnected from everything else. You know, I like to think about wholeness in the way of like the full moon. So we had a new moon the other day, and so in the night sky you could barely see the moon, but was the moon still full and whole? Yes, the moon did not disappear out of the sky. The moon was still whole and it was still full. It's just its surface reflection was not full, right? We couldn't see its surface reflection. So I like to think of it in this way, is that we as people have these surface reflections, and our experiences of life are these surface reflections that kind of wax and wane, and sometimes we appear more full, and at other times we appear more dim and that sort of thing. But always there is this innate wholeness that is never not there. There is a fullness that we as humans, and in fact everything has. There's an innate, I like to use what Parker Palmer says. He's like, there's this innate hidden wholeness that all things have. So this morning I want to tether to our wholeness in sort of that sort of respect. So that we can have this conversation in a place that's rooted in wholeness and fullness and compassion, really, and encourage. So wherever you are, just take a moment to sit. And if it feels okay to you to close your eyes, just close your eyes. If not, you can simply gaze down your cheeks. And just take a moment to let it all settle and let it all be. Let all of the pieces and parts of your life and your living just land and settle. And land here in the arms of the breath. Just experience the breath as it weaves in and weaves out of your body. Experiencing the breath weaving the inner and outer landscape together. And the breath that stitches you here and now into this time and this place as you are. And if your attention wanders into the surface reflection of the turning of your mind, no problem. Simply notice that. Notice the surface reflection of your mind there. And then invite yourself back to the experience of the breath. always present in the background, always there whether you're noticing it or not. Notice where in your body you most experience the sensation of breath. Maybe it's in the belly or in the chest, in the throat. Notice how the simple act of experiencing your breath can bring you to a place that is more steady and enduring. And continuing to rest back in the arms of your breath. Simply acknowledge the surface reflection of the greater circumstance of your life right now, all of the pieces and parts in play, all of the uncertainty or certainty. Just acknowledge the churnings of the circumstances of your life right now. And notice how the breath holds that and tends to that and soothes that. Rest back in the arms of your breath once again. Noticing where you experience the sensation of breathing most in your body. From within the spacious expanse of the breath, simply notice the surface reflections of the sensations in your body right now. Yes, you feel the breath, but perhaps you feel your seat on the chair, on the cushion, the touch of the air on the skin, or the beat of the heart in the chest, or maybe an ache or a strain in the body, or a place of openness or freedom. Simply acknowledge the surface reflections of sensations in your body right now. And notice how your breath is enmeshed in all that and how it holds all of that and tends to and cares for all that. Whether you recognize it or not, the breath always there and supporting the life of your body. Rest back in the arms of your breath. Simply enraptured by the way that as you breathe in, the entirety of all that is around you is taken in. And as you breathe out, how a bit of you on the exhale is woven into the atmosphere around you, not separate. From within the flow of the breath, coming and going, simply notice the surface reflections of your mind right now. Any thoughts or emotions that are present for you now. From within the expansive nature of your breath, simply notice thoughts and emotions. And notice how, whether you're aware of it or not, the breath permeates and holds this surface reflection of thoughts and emotions. Once again, rest back in the arms of your breath. Without having to control it or do anything to it, just simply allow yourself to experience the natural phenomena of the breath. And once again, notice where in your body you most experience the sensation of breath. And perhaps even place your hand there on that place in your body. And simply acknowledging the atmosphere that holds even the breath. At the bottom of your exhale for a moment, allow the breath to stand still as your awareness slips into the space between breaths. Allow the inhale to rise from that spacious pause. And allow the exhale to return you right to that space beyond the breath. And just for a moment or two, linger there. In that place where the breath stands still, and yet everything remains held and whole. whether you're aware of it or not. Just experiencing a moment of abiding that isn't ruptured by the turning of breath and of life and of all things. An abiding, enduring wholeness that is always and already just here. Acknowledging that this remembrance of wholeness that we seek is never not there. So we can stop searching and striving and grasping for this. May we engage this conversation today, this exploration today, from a place of wholeness. From this place of wholeness, may we have the courage to see the truths of our surface reflections and how they may or may not honor the wholeness of ourselves and all others. From a place of wholeness, may we engage with ourselves and each other in the way of compassion. And from this place of wholeness, you can allow your eyes to softly open. It's really important to start there and to continue to go back there again and again, specifically in this conversation, always, but even more so in this conversation that we're having right now as it pertains to equality, white supremacy, racism. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been starting to unpack a little bit of what it is to be white in the world today and the privileges that we get from that, what it means to have white skin, because white skin does mean something in the world today. And for some, we're just waking up to that fact that our white skin means something in the world today. And that in and of itself is a privilege, because our parents maybe didn't necessarily have to talk to us about the fact that our white skin means something, that our white skin will afford us certain privileges. As I have this conversation with my daughter, she's like, well, that's not fair. And I'm like, I know. I mean, I wonder, had we had this conversation about what my white skin meant when I was a kid, how different I might be viewing the world. But anyways, it's a privilege in and of itself to be waking up to this at this stage in our lives, because let's be clear, people of color have had to have this conversation with themselves and with their children for generations, and at far too young of an age, just for their kids' safety and wellness. So that in and of itself is a privilege, to just be waking up to what our white skin means at this moment and the privilege that holds, and then at the cost of, and the cost that is to our brothers and sisters of color. So we just wanted to, you know, open it up. I know that we've been exploring it for the past couple of weeks, and I wanted to open it up. You know, last week I know Kimberly was sharing, and Nicole also shared on the privilege that they have found, that they have discovered in their whiteness. And, you know, some of the things that were shared last week were that, you know, the privilege in being able to travel around the world kind of freely, and also because of the whiteness of our skin, you know, be given some kind of agency or authority. Also, you know, the privilege of silence and being able to engage the conversation when and if we want to, and being able to like rest back when we don't. That was another thing that was shared. I wanted to open it up to just hear, you know, from maybe one or two of you, what privilege, you know, has your white skin, have you acknowledged, have you discovered that your white skin has given you? Or privileges. You can raise your blue hand or your real hand on the screen if you have your video on. Have you guys awoken to any privileges that you have? What does, you know, your white skin mean? Yeah, okay, Christine, I'm gonna unmute you, hun. Okay, oops. I think we both unmuted. Oh, wait, you go ahead, you do it, okay.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you so much for doing this. What comes up for me, and it was so impactful when you were talking about the moon in the shadow, is right when I graduated from high school, I went right into childcare, and I started working with kids in group homes. And so these kids were 4 to 14. And I remember working in this facility that was in a home setting, and thinking day after day, showing up to work, of not even knowing that kids grew up like this, and that they don't have parents, they're wards of the state. And I worked there for 5 years, and throughout that, it was still a conversation of not even knowing that people grew up like this, or that there was that much lack. And so in my life, and having experienced that as such, like at a young, impressionable adult age, I feel like it changed me, but still in my daily life, I experience situations where I can kind of identify with what someone may feel like when something comes up, but at the same time, it's very foreign to me. And being, you know, being in childcare and feeling like that need to nurture and have compassion towards other people, to me, I feel like that the privileges hit me that I actually don't know what that feels like. And that feels weird to me, because in childcare, there's a place where, yes, someone's crying, they got physically hurt, and you can nurture that. But in this, for me, I find a place of inadequacy to where I don't even know how to help. And that's a privilege, because I have no idea what that feels like. So thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's this big gap, because you want to help so bad, but you're like, it's so hard to empathize with that, because, you know, we don't know. We have had a privilege of feeling a little bit more safe. And it's not to say that, you know, all people with white skin have been raised in, you know, with 2 parents and, you know, that sort of thing. But because of the nature of oppression and racism, it is more likely that people with white skin will be able to be afforded privileges of, you know, a safe, nurturing home environment, you know. Yeah. So, you know, yeah. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think we'll leave that right there, because that's really potent. So let's just leave that right there. Thank you so much, Christine.
Sure. Yes, thank you for listening.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, who else? Does anybody else have a way in which they have what privileges do we have as white folks? It's a stumper, huh? So, some of the things, and if you guys want to chime in, I mean, some of the things that I've come to realize is I had the privilege to screw up in high school and college and not go to jail and not still be in jail because of the ways that I screwed up as a kid. Because I was a kid, I screwed up because I was a kid. I have that privilege.
Hey Meg, also just so Carolyn did raise her hand.
Oh, Carolyn. Oh, sorry, I did not see that, Carolyn. Okay, Carolyn. All right, let's unmute you, honey. Thank you, Ash. I did not see that.
Or maybe she didn't, but she looked like she raised her hand for a moment. Sorry, Carolyn, if you didn't.
I did.
I saw you raise your hand.
Okay. I think that we have so much. It's staggering to think of all the privilege we have. I grew up in a neighborhood where we just played, freely without being afraid for, my whole childhood. And then being able to just walk or go or do anything without fear. It got scarier when I moved into a city after college or during college, but just to have that freedom of just feeling like you could just go and play and not be afraid, that feeling of safety and security that I think so many people of color don't have. And so I think that all of the things that we have, not going to jail is a big one, but just being surrounded by just safety and love and not, I mean, everybody, has little things when they're growing up, but for the most part, just feeling freedom, just complete freedom and joy and, out the door in the morning and back in at lunch and out the door and then back in for dinner and then out the door and just completely free. And then college, then, just all of these things. It's just overwhelming how much we have. It's incredible in the world, even compared with other Caucasian people, we have a lot here in the United States. And it's just overwhelming almost to think of the difference. And one thing that I heard in a discussion on the POTUS, was that they were asking white people to start speaking up, that when people are saying something or doing something that is racist or questionably racist, to speak up, don't be quiet. They said that that people of color really need white people to speak up at this point in time. And so I am often quiet. Sometimes I'm not quiet, but I'm trying to speak up and address it when it comes up. Well, I'm just fortunate. Thank you. And thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, I think, even just, I think about my neighborhood, it's not just even when I was growing up, at my neighborhood right now. There's a Black family that lived on the corner, and they've since moved to Houston when there are more people that look like them. And, all of the kids would be outside playing in the neighborhood in the evening. And when it started to get dark, Talik had to come inside. He wasn't allowed to play out after dark because of the implications of, even in today's day and age, even though, most of us in the neighborhood know Talik, not everybody does. And if a little Black boy is running through their yard playing tag, the likelihood of him getting hurt because of his Black skin went way up, so he can't play after dark. And then I think about, too, what you said, Carolyn, as far as like, I lived in a place where that was okay, where there, in the city, there's just a lot more people, and so there's even this privilege to be able to choose where we live. I don't know if everyone, if the history of redlining and how that continues to, be pervasive in society today, but that literally kept Black and brown people out of the neighborhoods that were outside of the city. And, so, we even get this privilege to choose where we live. And that's a privilege. We get the loan because it's well documented that depending on your name or the color of your skin, you're not going to get the loan for the house that you want, even if you can afford it. Yeah. So wait, go ahead. You had a follow up, Carolyn.
Yeah. My town was and still is all white where I grew up. And I always thought that Black people just wouldn't want to live there because it was all white. And I discovered that a cook from one of the big restaurants tried to buy some land in our town, Mogador, and immediately the family bought up the property. And that was the secret way that they could keep people of color out of our town, and still do today. There are no people of color. There were very few Catholics, quite frankly, in our town. And so, yeah, that was just a secret way that happens, because if you put something up for sale and somebody of color wants to buy it, if a family member wants to buy it, they get first dibs and they can keep people buying in that neighborhood.
So I think that we can
realize
go ahead.
It was just a real awakening to go, oh my goodness.
Right. Well, and we start to hear this, and you start to hear the stories, and it's like, wow, the implications are deep, right? They're really, really deep, and it's pervasive. This system of racism is woven into the fabric of our society. And we want to turn the corner a little bit. We really want you guys to continue to uncover and discover where white privilege, where you see your white privilege in your life, because these are the places that we can start to work to confront that. If we see our white privilege within our children. I hear Christine talking about children, and I hear Carolyn talking about her childhood and whatever. How is it that we can talk to our schools about how can we what programs are or are not in place for anti-racism and for equality and that kind of thing. What kind of training do we have for our teachers to check their their implicit biases and unconscious biases? So anyways, there's a lot of, wherever our privilege is, and it's everywhere, but where you're starting to really see it crop up, notice the things that you can do. And maybe it's just in a moment, like Carolyn was saying, of like, oh, speaking up when it would be more comfortable to be quiet. You speak up. I had my Black Lives Matter, we were we've been going to the protests here in Reno, and I went to the mountains last weekend, and I had my Black Lives Matter, poster board. I have it in my back window of the car, and I got yelled at the gas station for having that, and every ounce of me wanted to be like, to just like get out of the scenario. Not that I needed to like stand up and fight, but I did need to stand up and say something, and so when it's more comfortable to back down, sometimes we do have to, in a way that's tethered to our wholeness, stand up and say something, and that's me just having a sign. I was like, gosh, I can't imagine then having Black skin, the flack you might get at the gas pump. But anyways, I just want to take a moment here. This is something. So even if you don't want to share, perhaps everybody think about for a moment, a place where it is that you acknowledge that you have privilege because of your white skin. Just think about that for a second. You don't have to share it, but just think about it. And think about what it would be like if that privilege was taken away. And notice any stories you're telling yourself about that. And then simply notice where you feel that in your body. And allow yourself to really feel that in your body. And continue to feel that while you also feel the breath that surrounds that and embraces that. In a place of fullness that is never not there. A place of abiding that remains unscathed by that. You do have the capacity to feel it all. And allow your eyes to open. So we want to turn the corner here. I can't beg you enough to continue that exploration on your own and continue to feel what that's like in your body and continue to be held by the fullness of your breath and the something more, so that you have the courage to feel the dissonance of that. That's important. But really what we want to turn to this week is the roots of white supremacy. And where does this come from? And I have been reading the works of a gentleman named Ibram Kendi for many years, and he's the author of the book that I think that a lot of people are recommending at the moment, called How to Be an Anti-Racist. But this man also wrote a book called Stamped from the Beginning. And I read it a few years ago, and it really opened my eyes to the roots of racism and what's happening in the world. He also has a young adults version just called Stamped. That's also very good. And it's just basically Stamped from the Beginning, made for young adults. But I also found it with concepts that I was having a hard time grappling with. Reading just Stamped actually helped, because I'm not as mature in this knowledge and information as I would like to be. So I highly recommend them both, but I have to give all of this credit to him. And so Ibram Kendi is a historian and an author and an amazing scholar. And the thing that he wrote and that he really highlighted for me, that's really changed, it was a game changer for me in the way in which I see and understand, and also then stand up to best I can racism in the world today. And this is what it is. He said, if we go all the way back to the roots of, all the way back in history to the roots of oppression, what he saw there and what he says there is that racist ideas didn't give rise to the systems of oppression. Systems of oppression gave rise to racist ideas. So let me say that again. Racist ideas, racist ideology did not give rise to the oppressive systems that perpetuates it. There were oppressive systems in place that gave rise to racist ideas to justify the systems that were there. The implications of that are really huge. And I invite you to continue to unpack that. I mean, like that's, you know, there's so much that Ibram Kendi writes about and says that that's been one that's continually got me flipping myself over, like re-looking at what and how racism is. So oppressive systems were already in place, and it was not necessarily based on race. It wasn't based on race way back when. And you know, the discrimination was different, you know, different groups of people, but it was all rooted in domination. A certain group of people needed to dominate, needed to feel a sense of hierarchy, wanted more power, more wealth. And so from this place of domination, that, you know, they would oppress others so that they could dominate. Racism became the justification for the systems of domination and oppression. And then it stuck. And then it, you know, went through, you know, it went all the way through, you know, through Europe and then over here to the States. So the implications, and I'm oversimplifying this by a lot. I mean, that book is huge. Ibram's work is amazing, and I really want you guys to dive into this. But ultimately, what I want us to take from this right now, from this little snippet, is that we need to look at our own tendencies towards domination. And it's sort of insidious modern day expressions which come out, it was come out in this insatiable need for more, never enough. I mean, Ashley and I were talking about this earlier, and, you know, we've been teaching together for a long time, and still we have, I mean, we have this tendency between us to want to dominate. So maybe Ashley will be talking and teaching and something, and I have this domination tendency that might want to come up, that if I'm not careful in a moment, will make it about her knowing less and me knowing more. Do you see? So there's this need to dominate, this need to compete, the need to be the best kind of comes up. And I feel like, oh, I have something that I've got to say that's going to be more important. And I don't think that maybe she's going to get to that point, and I need to make this point because I know this thing and it's more important, and blah, blah, blah. And pretty soon I make it about perhaps her not knowing as much and me knowing more, or whatever she's saying not being important enough and what I'm saying being more important. And then so I jump in. Do you guys see like how that can show up just in a flash? And so then I have these tendencies to make it about her and her sort of like shortcomings, which are not there. That it's not a fact. Does that make sense to you guys? And so we've got to understand where our own tendencies and need for domination come from, which ultimately they come from a place when we feel disconnected from our wholeness. They show up as a need to compete and to control and to get more, never enough. When we're disconnected from our wholeness, we feel like we need to dominate and compete and, you know, and talk over and get more and do more and get more notoriety and get more wealth. And do you guys see the insidious nature of this? And so we really, it's super important for us to connect to our innate wholeness, because first of all, that's going to give us the capacity to actually look at these moments when we really just want to dominate over everything, to look at our own sort of misguided domination effects or our tendencies, so that we can dismantle that within ourselves. And then ultimately, dismantle the systems of oppression that perpetuate racism as its justification. You guys see that? And it's not going to be easy work, because this, when we're dismantling the systems that privilege white folks, we have to, at the expense of others. The solutions aren't necessarily we get to keep all of that. We get to keep everything and all of the wealth and all of the power, and we get to keep this system that's like and so when we talk about dismantling the police and that sort of thing, and you get the uprising of like, oh, but what about the the good guys who are, the police are in place to protect the safety of white people and keep people of color in line. We have to dismantle that system. It's going to be uncomfortable. We have to attach to our wholeness in order to do that. Does that make sense to you guys? Am I making sense here? Ashley, you are so good at clarifying, and I know that you have a lot that you want to say about this. So let me know what you want to add here.
There's just like one, it's kind of a jump, but there's just something that's like really present for me that feels important to mention in all of this, which is I'm trying to think of the best way to tie it all in. I mean, for me, it ties all in, but I want to like articulate that, which is another part of our of the culture of privilege or supremacy is to, I saw this week, is like this perfectionist tendency, our like deep desire to do it right and like be the best at something. Like, I'm even just going to poke fun at us all on this call right now of like, here we are doing our best, doing our good white person anti-racism work, and like, you better be the best at it, like maybe you're not as much as Megan, like Megan and I like that, but it's a sincere, genuine effort. Right. And I think what feels really important to me to tie into this is, like Meg so like humbly said, she's like, oh, I needed to read the kind of children's version of that book because I was having a hard time kind of grappling with some of these concepts, and even Meg and I, as we're talking to each other on the phone, we're acknowledging like, we're not well versed in this. We're just learning this. We're kind of like, it's embarrassing and it's frustrating, and so I want to like, we'll get to this in like, as we move forward into our next conversations on these calls, but a big part of this work and what we've been focusing on for the last couple of weeks is actually like holding the mirror up to ourselves and looking at our blind spots and questioning where this system actually benefits us, where we buy into it, what it would look like to release it. But what keeps coming so true to me is just like, we actually have no real idea of what it would feel like to release it. We have no actual idea of what the experience of, racist violence is. Like, we can hypothesize about it and we can sit here and talk about it. And like, so there's even like a rub that comes up for me of like, oh, here we are. We're all just so privileged being able to sit here, talk about this too. It's not to say we shouldn't be doing this work, but like, and then, what's even from there, the next, or side by side step. And, a big piece for, and this is what Meg and I are looking at doing for Alaya and looking at, we want to do for ourselves too, is, actually begin to really, truly look towards our friends that are of color, especially, not that you can't, of course, like absolutely have conversations and ask questions and like, inquire with your friends of color, but there are true leaders out there who are people of color, who are educating this Ibram Kendi. It's great. Like, we can read their books and we can, digest the information. But like I started last week's call, it's like, it's actually like not my information, really yet, not our information really yet. So I want to like, because I feel like there's like, there's kind of this overwhelming space of like, okay, I get all of this and like, oh my God, what do I do with it? You know? And I think it's kind of, you know, a supremacist kind of perfectionist kind of like urgency tendency of us as white folks to like know what to do with it and like try to figure out and like, you know, inadvertently like bypass our leaders of color from actually leading the way in this conversation, you know? So I know that we've been doing our best here to like share links and share books and share resources. And I really urge all of us to actually, you know, invest in the work of these friends and brothers and sisters of color who are leaders and like have been talking about this and educating themselves and writing and doing podcasts and doing the real work to educate us. Like they're our teachers, and we're here to like do the work with ourselves, but they're going to be the ones that actually help us to know, what do we actually do with this now? What does it feel like? How can we actually, you know, step into this? For me, there's like a rub of feeling like, oh, it's even like a little bit elitist and a little bit to like think that actually we even know what to do, you know, and that's a humble thing to say, in the sense that a huge part of our teachings and a huge teaching of yoga is that, you know, and when we step into wholeness, we do know. But I really feel that what's clear is like our knowing is that we don't know, man. Like we're super blind at this. It's like so deep within us. We have to look externally, and we have to look to friends and teachers of color and indigenous friends leading the way to actually show us. This is where we start to lay down our supremacy. This is where we start to lay down our, you know, desire to know, and, you know, sometimes just like regurgitate information, you know. And so I just wanted to like turn that piece. It was like feeling really present for me. And, you know, Meg and I are talking about having, you know, a racial equality kind of aspect to an Alaya training, and maybe we even do something here to really go like, hey, we want to, we're good meaning white folks here. We want to learn, we want to know, and like someone else needs to lead the way. You know, actually, you know, like we need to, like, just what to Carolyn said, like, absolutely, we need to speak up, and we need to speak out against racism, and we need to start to do our work. But also, in order to be able to really see these blind spots, in order to really be able to like dismantle this, we're going to have to actually really look towards leaders of color who can show us the way. And so, you know, we've been sharing some resources, and I really invite you all to go out there. Maybe we can share some resources in the next week's call too, whether it's to invest in, you know, there was a big, I saw it happen on social media this week. I'm really not on social media so much, but there's a big kind of pushback of there being a lot of white folks in the wellness area who were basically like digesting free information and then like sharing it and sharing it and sharing it and sharing it, as opposed to really pointing people and pointing their fans or pointing their followers or pointing people to the actual source of the information. You know, and this is a way, again, that we kind of claim, you know, we have like all these resources to information. We have access to information. We have access to these resources. And to really be clear, like, and Meg just did so beautifully. She was like, I'm honoring all, like, this work is Ibram Kendi's, not mine. And she's honoring, like, this is, you know, I'm just learning this. And so I just kind of want to, I know it's time just about now. I'm sorry, Meg, maybe I talked a little too long. But I kind of, it felt important to kind of turn the corner here and go like, and we're here doing this work, and we're here self-reflecting, and our intention certainly here within Alaya and within our community here is to elevate our BIPOC brothers and sisters who can lead the way of this conversation. It doesn't mean we don't do our work. It doesn't mean that, and this is the thing, it's not about going and like as many of people talked about, like, oh, we're kind of tired of talking about, we're tired of doing this work. Yes, that, you know, I
think we're losing you a bit, Ash. It's hard to hear you.
That also is from many, many, many leaders who have created great, or maybe we can spend some of our money. Oh, really? Costa Rica Wi-Fi. Can you hear me? All right, you might have to take over, Meg. Sorry.
It's kind of cutting in and out. Is it just happening for me, or are you guys hearing the cutting in and out? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like every fourth or third and fourth word or something. And now it looks like you might be frozen.
Well, I can do.
Okay. Well, you know, so I think what, you know, Asheigh is, you know, turning the corner towards, and it's really important that we understand that our want to be the leaders and to be perfectionists and to be all, these are the modern day expressions of domination. This is our modern day tendency towards domination, to be leading the charge for equality, to be leading the charge for that. That's our, you know, that's again another misguided sort of domination tactic. And so we get to be listeners and followers, and yes, we get to speak up when, you know, when racism shows up. We get to do that, but really lifting up our friends of color, that's what starts to help us dismantle our own domineering tendencies inside, and then as a community and as a society. And in order to do that, we have to connect to our wholeness. Otherwise, we're just too fragile. It's just too fragile. Our ego will hang on for dear life. And so, you know, continue to connect to your wholeness so that you have the courage to do this work. So yeah, I was just, so that we have the courage to do this work and step down from the domination that is literally not just, it's killing us and everyone else. I mean, how many times have we been in group together and we're like, oh, this insatiable running around for more, never enough is killing me. That's our system of domination, and we can dismantle that for the good of everyone, you know. And that's, you know, so I think that, you know, the way that Asheigh turned the corner, it looked like she just dropped off completely, was perfect towards what does it look like to step down from a leadership position, and the one in charge, the one in the know, and rather lift up somebody else and to be a follower for a moment or for your life, you know? So I think that, you know, in the name of time, we'll go ahead and end here today. But I just want to thank you all so much for being willing to lean in to the conversation, and to hold this all in wholeness. This is not going to be easy, but it will absolutely be worth it. I believe that deep in my heart. And so let's just keep going. And what I recommend this week is that we all look at our tendencies towards domination, towards dominating an experience or a situation. And, you know, that's something that we all can do within ourselves while we're listening and engaging and lifting up the voices of color, to look at our own sort of systems of domination that we have inside of ourselves. Okay. All right, so we'll see you all next week. Love you all so much. Have a really wonderful rest of your day. Bye.